Welcome to the Splitting Hairs podcast. It's good to see you guys. Presented by Jackrabbit Illustrated. It's Kyle and Thomas Stacker again. This is Stacks on Sacks. We appreciate all those who will tune in now or download the podcast audio version. That'll be coming out tomorrow or this evening, depending on when our team can get that out to you. Just want to do some admin stuff quickly. The holidays are coming up. I'm dressed festively in honor of that, and would love for you guys to check out our sponsors. If you're in Bodle, South Dakota, Drake's Place is an awesome spot to get some good eats, get some good community, and have some Jackrabbit themed items as well. You can pick up some eats and share those with your friends, your family. Definitely give them a shout out whenever you're out that way. Cottonwood Coffee is our other title sponsor of Brookings, South Dakota. Obviously, they have the bistro. They also have the coffee shop on Main where you can study, you can get some work done, you can look at some local art, you can just have some good conversation. Or, you know, for stocking stuffers coming up, you can always check out their online ordering platform. You can do subscription services. You can get whatever you like for the Keurig. They have Cottonwood coffee pods for that. You can use the exclusive Jackrabbit Illustrated code that is JI22 on any orders of $10 or more. You'll get 10% off. So check that out. That code is JI22. You can also find Cottonwood coffee products at Walmart's, local Walmarts, and Walmart online by just Googling Cottonwood Coffee Walmart and checking out some local Southern Minnesota and South Dakota Walmarts. So give them a look. But Thomas, how you doing?
Man, I'm all good. I'm ready for this game. I touched down in Brookings yesterday. I'm excited to go to my first Jackrabbit game since I graduated. So,
Nice.
My first one in the Dana
Home
J
game.
since I graduated. Yeah, so
nice. Yeah, and you're in Brookings. So what's the weather like? That's been a hot topic of conversation over the past 24 hours or so.
They said it's going to be nice tomorrow, but right now it's like 4 or 5 inches on the ground, snowing. But I mean, like Coach Lujan said on Twitter, that's football weather, so that ain't no big deal.
You already know. McKnight was shouting out, you know, the football weather too. Football's meant to be played outside. It is strange seeing all these schools, you know, across the country in domes or, you know, just different surfaces. I miss the grass. I don't know why we can't return to that. It's better for player safety. It is probably harder to maintain. But what are your thoughts on that? You prefer playing on turf or grass, or do you have any preference?
I mean, I feel like when you're playing like out here, it's hard to play on grass because like when you like at a game like this or like a game like, you know, what was it, that USD game like a while ago that was like an ice bowl, like you hit your head on the ground like you're getting crunched.
Yeah.
if it's grass.
If it's grass, okay. See, my thought was like this would be like concrete that you're playing on, even though it's like because it's like frozen rubber and then there's concrete underneath it, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like I feel like it's kind of the same difference, like with grass, just because like when you play on a grass field and it gets cold, like that's also rock hard too. So
yeah.
It's like,
either way, you better bring your big boy pants because this is going to be. You're going to be on ice skates at times. You're going to, you know, Pierre went off in this kind of weather against USD a few years ago. I remember that. Rabbits are no stranger to the tundra, so we're going to be used to this weather. Holy Cross played in some elements last week as well against New Hampshire. I think that kind of even the playing field, no pun intended, for Holy Cross, according to a lot of the you know, the people who cover the FCS and specifically the Northeast. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know if it'll be a shock to them. They are in Sioux Falls, just like the spring season, because the coaches' offices overlook the field, as you can see kind of in our image in the background here for those watching. They don't want to do their walkthrough because of that. So they choose to do their walkthrough in Sioux Falls. That's common gamesmanship and just protecting their call sheets and things like that. So I understand that completely. At the same time, it's an early get up and get out from coming from Sioux Falls in this weather with an 11 a.m. kickoff. What are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on their players for sure. Just because like now, like I'm already 45 minutes away. I got to get up. I got to eat. Like their schedule is going to be like accelerated a ton too. Like, especially because the game's early and I got to drive a while before that. So, I mean, and in a way, like that could be a good thing. Like their players would be like up and ready to go, like by the time the game gets going. But their schedule is going to be a little bit hectic to start the day. So I don't know how they're planning mentally wise. Like, I'm not sure how great they are. So maybe they adverse that kind of adversity, and I mean they accept that kind of adversity. They kind of rise to the challenge. So
Yeah, I
more
don't
power
think
to
they're.
them.
Yeah, I don't think they're not a tough team by any means. I mean, they're 12-0 for a reason. I would think the Patriot League would tend to be a little bit down as far as national competition, but they've proven they took out a CAA team, they took out an FBS team. I believe the stats show that they're 29-1 in their last 30. That's pretty impressive. No matter who you are, you gotta line up and you gotta get after it. And Sluka's kind of tough, right? I mean, you've had some intimate moments with him. What would you say it's like in terms of playing him and his style of play?
I'd say like him, like their offense like lives and dies by him. Like, of course they have like great receivers. Their offensive line is pretty solid, but like he's what makes that whole offense go. And I mean, I think he's a he's a very passionate player, and like you
Yeah.
can tell by the way he plays. Like, and that's the way the game meant to be played. Like, you're not supposed to be nice out there. You're not supposed to be buddy buddy with everyone. So I mean, like, if I think you're a quarterback and you're rubbing people the wrong way, like on the other side, like that's a good thing. And I believe he's very good at that.
I dig that. That's a good assessment, man. And you can kind of see that in his kind of how he carries himself, his swagger a little bit. And we're no strangers to that on our side of the ball either. We got
Yeah.
our guy. All he does is seem to win football games, and we're glad we're rocking with number 11 because he's built different. Now, talking about that in terms of how this team is made up in terms of their physicality, who they live and die by, which is Sluka, and then their coach Bob Chesney. Obviously, he's gotten a lot of acclaim for being a young guy who's really revived this program, or I don't even know if I should say revive, just put him on the national map pretty consistently here over the past few years. He's been getting some run for FBS looks. I know his name has been in the conversation. He knows how to prepare. I would compare him in terms of coaches we see on a annual basis to like a Farley or a Spack in terms of his ability to scheme defensively.
Right.
I know we were a little bit slow to get off in the spring game offensively. And then we were able to kind of take over, but they had us with a few 3-and-outs there early. What do you think the complexion will look like in this upcoming game? Because we were clicking on all cylinders against Delaware from an offensive perspective.
Yeah. And two, like you got to credit their players. Like, I think his name is Dobbs, one of their linebackers. Like,
Yeah.
he's a dude. You know what I mean? So, and the further you go in the playoffs, like you're not just going to find people that's just going to roll over. You know what I mean? And when you have a good team like that, good defense like that, I think where we're gonna kind of succeed a little bit is they don't rotate their D line as much. So they're not a bad D line at all. But like their ones kind of take the absolute majority of the reps, and like their twos come in when it's like absolutely necessary. So like, I don't think there's going to be a dude that's going to be able to hang with Mason McCormick and all those guys for like 4 straight quarters. Like I don't think anyone in FCS is. So,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Shout out to Mason for getting on another All-American team, and as well as Caleb Sanders, the Colonel, the Juggernaut and the Colonel checking in, and then Mr. Built Different himself, Mark Gronowski,
the GOAT,
earning sophomore All-American honors as well. So we'd be remiss if we didn't shout those guys out.
The GOATs for real. They are, I'd say that group of guys, and what they've been able to lead this team to is special. So I mean, no one's gonna forget this squad, that's for sure.
Nope.
So, I mean,
they definitely don't forget you, and you become legend status when you hoist it at the end. And I know that's the goal right now. Like I've been seeing a lot of stats thrown around because that's what pundits do this time of year, because that's what they talk about, because it's interesting, right? I mean, numbers are interesting, analytics are interesting. The best analytic is who wins in January on ABC for the Natty, but we're the 29th ranked offense overall in terms of where we ranked, I believe, during the regular season, or in terms of total offense, I should say. And that's dead last of playoff participants currently. So I find that fascinating because I haven't seen that the past 3 weeks. I haven't seen a team that looked like the 29th. So, you take that into account and you factor that into how we're playing and the rhythm we're playing at and getting healthy, and what you're starting to see is a team that's playing for each other, has a lot of continuity. It really looks like, doesn't really matter who's getting the ball. I don't even think Tucker may have had maybe one catch last week. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Hines was consistent as all get out per usual. O-line was just, being a bully in a phone booth, So when we look at that and we look at the productivity of our defense, I think the real question mark throughout the rest of the way, if you're going to have one, because this is a pretty complete team, would just be special teams, not even the kicking game from a field goal perspective, but our punt game and our punt return game. Because while we have a home run hitter, it's kind of like that Sammy Sosa. You're a Chicago guy. I think you're a White Sox fan, though, right?
Sox fan, yeah. Sosa is the GOAT, though. So.
But Sosa's one of the GOATs. I'm a big hurt guy. I just turned 35. So shout out to number 35 himself, Frank Thomas, big hurt, because that's how I feel these days, big and hurt. But back when Sosa played, he'd either hit a home run or he'd struck out a ton. So that's kind of like, a decent parallel to what we're starting to see in the return game, where I would just like to, and it's not, he's been catching punts that are in the air that are catchable, but those kind of rugby style rollers, the crazy bouncers, kind of got to let those go, right? Unless it's a pure, ground ball situation that's going right into the breadbasket, right? Is that,
right.
What's your take on that?
It's kind of, I'd say like it's difficult because like certain teams, like I'd feel like when you're as good on offense and defense as the Jacks are, like you could afford to like take special teams completely out of the game. You know what I mean? Like you could say, hey, we're not gonna try and return anything, right? Like we punt it, like we're just gonna get it out of there. But at the same time, like when you have a guy that's as dynamic as Jaden back there, and some like, well, you don't want to tell him like, no, don't go make a play, because he's done it so many times before, and he's like won us games like on those kind of things. So it's just it's kind of got to be like to his discretion. And, obviously like you're coming off like a 2-week break, like everything's not going to come all together right away.
Perfect. Yeah. I see that, man. That's a good way to word it. And it's the same thing like with Pierre back in the day, right?
Yeah.
You don't tell him not to make a jump cut and bounce anything, right? You can kind of caress him, console him, let him know, hey, like, if it's there, try to press the A gap. But home run hitters, you can't, when you don't possess that talent, it is really hard to coach that because they're artists, right? So Jaden's an artist back there. Same thing with Jackson. They're both artists on the field. What I would say is when you have it, if I'm a coach and I put myself in Coach Stig's position, our defense is so good. Do not do anything to put our defense in an even more precarious position, right? That's all I'm saying. Like if you can catch it clean in the air, catch it, get upfield and go. But if I'm Coach Erickson, special teams, I'm like, hey, don't touch the ball. Our defense is so stout. Let's lean on them. Don't touch it if it's chaotic, right? Just spare yourself that. And it's tough because competitors compete. And when you have the talent Jaden does, he has that unwavering faith in himself. Sometimes the conditions lend themselves to just being really difficult to field it. So that would be my one thing that I would say. The other thing is Holy Cross is coming in with, I believe, 8 blocked punts. I would say more so than our return game. This is our biggest question mark as a unit in terms of overall team makeup. This phase of the game is one where Hunter, and it's not Hunter's punting ability, it's how slow his drops are. He's got to improve that, and I'm sure he has, and I'm sure that was a point of emphasis. Because sometimes he just takes a little bit extra time to get it off clean, or whatever the case may be. Maybe there's too much leakage, but we have had punts blocked. One that materialized into points right away for Illinois State, and that's kind of what had me thinking, okay, schematically, this is very similar to a Farley SPAC situation with Coach Chesney on the other side. Play good defense, run the ball, try to make a game-changing play on special teams, right? So our makeup right here is great. And I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Ben from the B team, because he made a great point here. And I want to get your thoughts on this. This is almost Montana State light, right? They like to run the quarterback much like the Bobcats do. They play good defense, but they only have 60 scholarships compared to the 63 that the FCS level gets. That by and large they only have 60. and they play good defense. They're built similarly. They don't have the depth. They don't have probably, quite the top tier talent, but they're not really known for throwing the ball to the same degree that a lot of other schools are that we have faced.
I would say, like, in terms of like that, yes, but I would say like Montana State would be like these guys on steroids.
Yeah,
Not like
that's what Ben was saying.
yeah, no,
Like,
for sure.
Right. Holy Cross is Montana State light.
Yeah, so like and just to get used to like stuffing quarterback run and the kind of stuff that Tommy Malot's going to bring to the table, and another physical line coming in, their D line's like, I think their D line's really good.
Yeah,
might be one of the best ones we see this year, and
exactly.
I mean, not to look past these guys whatsoever, but this will be a good like litmus test to see like how ready we are to see that kind of stuff. So
yep, and that was his point. So that's great. I'm glad you're seeing it that way, because you've played them. You've played both these squads. You have great working knowledge. Rick Jensen makes a great point. Dobbs is out this week. He's their stud linebacker. And that's, you hate seeing teams get beat when they're not at full strength, but this time of year, attrition becomes the name of the game. Your greatest ability is your availability, and the Jacks have known that all too well in years past. And right now we're just kind of hitting our stride with that.
Yeah.
We have playoff Zay going off. Love to see him tote the rock probably 30 times this week. And there was another great point. I want to say it. Someone who covers the draft thought that the offense was going to be more explosive this year. Maybe it was Reddit, FCS. One of those coverage platforms was saying how the Jacks were supposed to be more explosive. They would have expected more. But in reality, I think Luan is just playing to the strengths of the team makeup, which is unbelievable defense. So many quality players on offense. Let's possess the ball and just nullify the other team's strengths. He's playing chess while everybody else wants us to play checkers and play the stat game. So I credit Luan again for just,
for sure,
really finding his stride, not being pressured from the outside noise to, have a 1,000-yard receiving duo, or, that flash that we had with Coach Eidsness, which is, no knock to Coach Eidsness, because he was a wizard himself. But you're not going to see 92 receptions from a Dallas Goedert, I don't think, in
it's
the
like
few years.
Like, one thing about it is, like, you look at teams that, like, I'd say the one team that did maybe have that flash that won a national championship was like James Madison.
Yep.
Like, other than that, like North Dakota State, like, I hate to mention these guys, but like when they have their games where they beat the crap out of people, like, it's not like the craziest, 80-yard bomb here and, huge run there. Like, a lot of it's just like, we have the ball longer than you and you're not stopping the run. So, like,
yeah, man, the last time a wide open spread team won, or a West Coast team won, was, I want to say, in 2009, the first time in Frisco when Eastern Washington beat Delaware. And so that doesn't happen, man. Like, people love these flashy, sexy offenses, and they're fun to watch. They're worth the price of admission, but it's kind of like, Randy Moss and Chris Carter. They don't have a ring to show for it. Those fools could take the top off of any defense. And it's good regional plug there. Everybody loves the Vikings or the Packers from up north. Aaron Rodgers, one title because they played great defense and they could run the ball a little bit. Aaron Rodgers is best when they can run the rock. I'm sorry, dude. The Bears, they won in 85 because they played damn good defense and they could run the rock. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. Ball control, time of possession, great defense, and field position, and that's the name of the game. The Furry Cows kind of figured that out and just did what they do. And then Iowa's been consistent, and the reason they've been consistent is because they do much the same. If they had a quarterback at all or any offensive imagination, they probably would have won the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
You never know.
For real.
Because they wasted that defense that we saw up close and personal early on this year. So another great point to that, to kind of put a capstone on it, from Jace Hollenbeck. Don't need to score 50 points when you can control time of possession, grind it down to the red zone, and then score points when you get there. Yes, sir.
Exactly. Like, bro.
Exactly right.
There's nothing more demoralizing than that, right? Like, like you see like, oh, like we're only down by 3. Like, dude, it's a 15-play drive. Like,
I know, right?
so like I think like just from a mental standpoint, like that's really hard to overcome for
Yeah.
anybody. You know?
The coldest game I ever played in, well, 2 of them. One, very similar field conditions to what they'll probably see tomorrow morning. The wind is the worst part when you have snow like this and you have a frozen ground. It's the wind because it's biting. Anybody who watched the telecast last week, you'll see the Jacks have their own little outhouse, so to
Got
speak,
little
that's heated
sheds
up.
out there.
You know, with the with the what is that? A jet heater? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's like it's this little space heater in there.
Space
Yeah.
heater. It's like a space heater on juice, though. You know, because
Yeah.
it literally, if you get too close, that thing will melt your gloves. It'll
Yeah.
melt them. Yeah, and if any players watching, don't put your cleats too close to it. It'll melt the bottoms of your
Oh,
cleats.
you talking about like the big one on
The
the
big one.
oh yeah. Dudes had that melt through jackets a couple times.
Yeah, bro, it's insane. Like it's no joke. You got to be careful. But when you're so cold, you can't even feel the surface of your skin heat up like that. So you just got to
Yeah.
be mindful of it. But to that point, I don't know if these Holy Cross boys are familiar with that kind of stuff. Like, it is very different what goes into preparing to stay warm, to stay energized. Like, obviously, like in my opinion, cramping at this late in the year, the body's kind of adapted, but cramping can still happen because you don't know how much perspiration you're losing, right? Because it
Right.
is cold. So cramps can be odd in games like this. Stingers are different, and like you said, from a point of demoralization, tackle Zay 30 times a game in this weather.
Yeah, because you're falling forward, like you're hitting the ground. And every time you hit the ground, you're like, this again. Like,
I
you know
want to
what I
see
mean?
rugby scrums.
Yeah. So I mean, if you got to come out and like, it's got to be one of those things. Like, and it can't be like, the fake hype. Like, dude, last week, like coming out with your shirt off and all
I
that.
know.
Like, every time we saw someone do that, we're like, they're worried about the weather. Like, if you come out
Bingo.
there and do that, you're trying to prove a point to me.
It's a
Like,
distraction.
right, like who you trying to be tough for? You know what I mean? So I was happy to see the Jacks got after him after that. Like, bro, you're not scaring nobody whether you're shirtless in like 5-degree weather. Who cares?
100%, man. Couldn't agree more with that.
Right.
And it's kind of like they did a study on fighters who smile at the pose downs, the stare downs. And those who are smiling and like yelling and stuff, they're actually in their own heads, and they tend to lose like a vast majority of the time because they're actually scared. You know what I mean? They're actually revealing out in public that they're not really tough. It's kind of fake tough. So I like keeping the main things. And I love that the Jacks did that last week. So looking forward to more of that tomorrow morning.
For sure.
We should tell y'all it is a nationally televised game. Don't want anyone to miss that. Out of the ordinary a little bit, but something we've grown accustomed to is getting at least one nationally televised game in the playoffs. It's on the main ESPN network at 11 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. Again, that's 11 a.m. Central Time tomorrow. Quarterfinals game. Holy Cross visiting Brookings, South Dakota to take on the number 1 overall seed. Again, Holy Cross is the number 8 seed for those of you just tuning in, getting a nice little bump in viewers here. We are taking on the number 8 seed, no slouch, Holy Cross out of the Patriot League. So, or is it the Pioneer League?
I think it's the Patriot League, Pioneer League. I think those are non-scholarship.
Yeah, those are the non-schollies.
Or it's reversed. It's 1, 2.
Yep, one of the P's.
Right.
It's interesting though, because for all those who can check out the Argus Leader article from Zimmer, he did do it is the Patriot League. Thank you, Rick. It is the Patriot League, so we were correct on that. But they've been dominant in that league. They're the cream of the crop out of that league consistently lately. An FBS win is an FBS win. I would like to be able to play some guarantee games against these G5 schools, group of 5 schools, for those who aren't aware of what that means. The non-Power 5 conferences. So Power 5 would be Pac-12, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and the ACC. So
yeah, you get a MAC.
Buffalo is out of the MAC, right? So
yeah. So, and I feel like, yeah, like this is a good squad because, like, I mean, a lot of teams in that conference are really like that. But I say it's going to take a lot more than a MAC win to scare the Jacks. I'll put it that way.
Absolutely. I mean, we get 2 more field goals against Iowa. We're taking down Power 5 Iowa.
Right.
And just kind of crazy way that game shook out. But, 11-game win streak currently, chance to win more games than we've ever have in South Dakota State history. That's just kind of a fun little, tidbit. Won't really matter if the ultimate prize isn't secured, but still worth noting because not a lot of teams are able to kind of reach that pinnacle in the sport. So worth noting. And then some other things worth noting. Now that we've covered the Jacks, Holy Cross a little bit, we're going to get our predictions in here, players of the game and stuff like that. But we do want to cover some interesting news out of the subdivision itself with some coaching changes and some potential conference shakeups. So, but first, who do you got in this? What do you like in terms of score predictions?
I'll go like 35-10. And that 10, I'm just saying that just to say it. Like, I mean, but I could very well see the Jacks putting a goose egg on these guys.
Again, and we keep bringing it. It's no disrespect to these other programs. We just have watched what the Jacks have been able to do this year. And it's pretty remarkable what their defense has been able to do. Again, shout out to Coach Rogers. Really want our alumni to look at doing whatever we can to try to secure him from a financial standpoint, even more in his counterparts all over the defensive side of the ball, whether, it be Coach Smith, Bobbitt. I mean, look at what Coach Smith has done with the chain gang. I mean, just nasty in terms of the development, the skill set, their technicians. I don't know if it's Coach Rogers and him in tandem, but they roll guys in appropriately. Just really, really good stuff. And then Coach Bobbitt has really secured the secondary, like for real, like done a really good job back there.
I mean, you could tell like it's the same, it's virtually the same guys out there.
Same guys, and they're playing at a completely different level.
Yeah.
And really a lot of youth too. So you can't say that it's just, they're older now and,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, like you look at someone that I don't know that we talk about enough is Tucker Large. Like
we don't talk about him enough. Yeah.
Dude, like the amount of stuff he was able to do this year and, coming in as a walk-on and being asked like so much of him, like I am extremely impressed.
Yeah. He's, he get honorable mention in the Valley?
I think so.
I think he got some honorable mention reckoning. We man, how dare us for not talking about him enough. I'm not sure if Matt and Chad or the B team talk about him, but he definitely needs to get more play. He's like the defensive version of Mike Morgan, that Swiss Army knife, I mean, and there have been so many Swiss Army knife type guys on the defense this year, whether it be Stallbird, safety, kind of playing that rover, that hybrid type position, whether it be, who we need to talk about too, Savion Williamson. My goodness.
Oh, yeah.
That dude, and I love it because he's from South Central Minnesota. He played at Waseca.
Yeah.
Waseca was one of my high school's kind of rivals. They were, I think we bumped up a class and they stayed down, but good school, good squad. He's just really taken his game up since his injury in the spring natty. And he was really coming on then too. So really excited to see his progression and growth and his contributions, and nothing's guaranteed, right? So him getting on the field and just making the most of his opportunity.
Yeah. And I'd say like, seeing just the confidence he plays with, like, you see some guys that they go out and they play kind of timid and they're like, okay, like feeling things out. Like when he goes out and plays, like he's playing like he belongs there. And I could say like, just that's credit to, how hard all those guys work. Coach Rogers as a linebacker coach, like I don't think I've ever seen like a team with like this many good linebackers. You know what I mean? Like with the injuries you've had this year and, the guys that you've had to roll in, move out of position and, have guys play, Mike's playing Sam and Sam playing safety. Like it's just incredible to see, like, and not even like to overstate the point. Like this is something like that is not common. Like, and I don't know if like Jacks fans know that or not, but like you're seeing like some incredible level of like linebacker play. I mean,
that in coaching, man. So like we say, oh, Jimmy's coaching his adjustments. Think of how difficult it is to not only coach, then get these guys who are playing all different types of positions to buy in, then understand the scheme and their responsibility as they're changing all these roles, then to play as hard as they play down in and down out. That is not common, man. Like
Right.
not common at really any level, but let alone the FCS level because of the depth, the caliber of player. I mean, we're a blue blood in FCS. We have been for almost a decade now. So, but you can't take that for granted. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
Especially with all the injuries we've had and the guys missing time, and just wait because there may or may not be a guy returning to the lineup this week. So who's an absolute dog, and we'll see what happens with that.
I think it's nuts that, like, you have, like you said, like having guys like that bought in where, like, and it's late in the season. Like, it's not like Savion's playing like week 2, right? Like, you find a lot of guys in other places or like guys of lesser character that would be like checked out by then. By the time they get that, it'd be like, oh man, like it's about time I get to play. But I mean, just seeing someone just being that bought into the program and just stepping up the way he did when he did, like,
man, it was needed. He literally over the past few weeks has kind of been an MVP, like a big time MVP. Like he's making plays that he's covering so much range and so much ground. He just gets the guy down, or he contributes to hitting NDSU or the North Dakota running back and helping contribute to a fumble. I think Winkleman popped it out, but his involvement in that play is just, really helping each level, right? Because then the secondary can kind of play softer when they need to. They can come up when they need to and fill, and they're not guessing. And then you have, the guys on the edge can do their thing, the more pressure we're putting on the quarterback. So it's really just great to see a complete team effort at every level. And that's kind of what you continue to see in all these publications. It's like they're pretty solid at every level. The guy on the color commentary last week, his name escapes me, but he was roommates with Goddard at the Senior Bowl, NFL tight end, great tight end at I want to say UMass. But he hit the nail on the head where there's really not too many weaknesses across the defense for the Jacks. And instead of continuing to be homers, I would say that, some areas that Stig always is a bit cautious of and doesn't really like to see is the QB run game. And that has been our weakness historically against Montana State. We were absolutely exposed. And I think, you tell me about that, and I'm not coming down on you directly or anything like that.
No, I mean, but I get it though. And that
they just had a damn good scheme. And, I think our offense could have done us some more favors in that game. I think the miles may have not, I can make excuses for you guys. I wasn't there. Those miles may have got caught up with you a little bit because you're going from Cali weather back to, to PA weather to.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to make any excuses. I will say, I do think, that team was good. And time a lot. We hadn't seen a lot of them on the year. So, I mean, we kind of went in not knowing what to expect. So, it was it's kind of rough. He does a good job. He did a good job of getting the ball out fast when he was throwing. You have an NFL wide receiver who was making plays. Their offensive line was good at what they did. I thought Tommy was good at, it wasn't like it would be like, oh, it's counter. It's supposed to hit right here. He would do like Pierre does and bounce it a lot. So if you over pursue, you're going to get beat on that. And I think, that was probably a good lesson for our team. And, seeing something like that from, a team other than North Dakota State or someone you'd expect QB run from, I think, they've learned from that. But
yeah, I'd be lying through my teeth if I said I wasn't hoping for maybe just a different matchup, just because I do think Vegan knows how to scheme us in terms of matchup to maybe more his advantage. But I think the Jacks are just hungry. I think this is the year, this is the year. So, right here, this is a great point by Darren, listener of the pod, friend of the pod. No way they can handle our depth. He thinks we'll pull away quite significantly in the second half. I definitely, I agree. And Darren, again, great point. Troy Anderson last year, absolute savage. There's a reason.
I was gonna say they had great players across the board, and not to say that was a good team that we lost to, but at the same time, it doesn't mean they should have, how that game played out is how it should have shook out. But I thought he was really good. I thought their D-line across the board was really good. Yep. I mean, those are some dudes that, they really didn't get as much shine as they probably should have.
They didn't. They kind of flew under the radar a bit there, and then they kind of emerged. Well, I mean, they had to go through. I mean, they lost to Montana, so that kind of stuck them in a precarious position to have to travel to Sam Houston. But then when they knocked them off, they were really starting to hit a stride, similar to the Jacks presented last week against Delaware, clicking on all cylinders and really flexing their muscles. So that was oh shoot. And then them earning that home game, that kind of shows you the necessity of earning such a high seed, and the fact that we're the number one overall seed this year is so crucial to so many things. Not the least of which is this: Scott Rust couldn't be more accurate here. The 12th man, aka Jackrabbit Nation, needs to show up and be loud on Saturday so we can make a difference. Absolutely. There's 2 games left. Yeah, honor these dudes.
What else are you doing?
There's 1 game left guaranteed, but go honor them.
Yeah, what are we doing, guys? You're not that busy. It's not that fun. Come on now.
It is so reassuring to see the student section full, man. It is so reassuring to see false starts created by the atmosphere and the crowd. And I'll never forget my 70-year-old grandparents coming to my game against North Dakota, the last one of my junior year. I want to say it was -6 with the wind chill. There was frozen snow on the grass. The grass was frozen with icicles and stuff. You could hear the crunch as you walked through. So if my 70-year-old grandparents could huddle up in the stands at the old Coughlin, I think people can enjoy the amenities and huddle up and maybe have some adult beverages if they're 21 and really get raucous for the Jacks.
No, for sure. And look, like we said, if you don't show up to these games, I don't want to hear it.
Yep. Say that again louder for the people in the back.
If you don't show up to these games, I'm not trying to hear it. Save it.
That's right. You can't criticize if you don't have skin in the game. That's kind of our mantra here on the Stacks on Sacks segment. So also, if you can say that 5 times fast, we'll give you a gift card. So now that you've kind of got your predictions, you said 31-10.
Yeah, 35-10.
35-10. I like that. In the spring season, it was 31-3. And I think so. I think this contest, it'll be interesting to see if the weather does create an equal, an equal playing field, so to speak. But I just think the Jacks' depth, like Darren said, is going to be too much. It'll be interesting to see how we attack them, what their game plan is. I'm going to go 35-3. I'm going to go 35-14. I always like to give a little bit more respect because you just don't know how these games are going to shake out.
And I'd love to be wrong. Guys, goose egg them.
Same possible. Here. I'd love to be wrong. I just think 14 points. I think this team is pretty good. They're improved, but the depth is going to take over. I believe in the conditions and the travel and all that. And then in terms of players of the game, I'll kick it off. I think it just being former defensive lineman and then switching over to the H-back fullback, I understand how difficult it is to tackle very quality running backs, and we have 2 of them. And the choo-choo train himself is gonna he arrives at 11 a.m. and he's gonna arrive with a fury. So we'll see. I think Isaiah Davis is going to be the player of the game on the offensive side of the ball. And then who you got on offense? And then we'll go D.
Just to pick someone different, I'll go Mark. In case we get the QB run game going and
on offense. Yeah. All right. Defensively, I like that. When Mark gets off with his legs, good things happen for the Jacks. Whenever he gets in that 50-yard range, Jacks win. Advantage Jackrabbits, as Stig would say. Defensively, I'm going to go with Savion Williamson. I think it's on brand for this pod, and also it's been on brand for how he's played the past couple games. So I really want to keep that trend going, because also we don't know how much run some of these other guys are going to get that may or may not come back.
I'll have to agree with you there. I'll give my man his roses, dude. He's been balling. I expect nothing to change this week. So
yes, sir. And then, I think Dustman's going to do his job again. He's been doing it really well, and he's clutch. Hopefully it never comes down to it, but he's been doing some good things. Hopefully his get-offs are quicker on the old punt unit, because, again, we've talked about Holy Cross and the Crusaders being quite good at punt block. So I'm sure they'll have something up their sleeves. Now that we covered that, that's going to be some exciting stuff. Again, it's on ESPN at 11 a.m. Central Time. Want to get to some exciting news. Exciting kind of depends on your framing of it, but
Yeah.
the FCS, apparently the WAC and the ASUN combo deal, are allegedly looking to move their entire conference up with about 10 other members in agreement to FBS. Thomas, what do you think about that?
When you're kind of just playing just to play, and you're not really getting a whole lot of that love with the FCS playoffs. And I get it, because you're like, bro, like, what am I even doing this for? Like, if I'm never in the playoffs, if I'm not making any noise with this, like, I'd probably end up just getting better recruits. Like, if I were just FBS, like, and I get that logic. So, like, I'm not going to trip on that. But, like, because it's like being a part of FCS without any of the benefits.
Yeah.
So, like, from that logic, I can understand as like an AD, you're like, okay, like, this isn't going anywhere. Let's just make more money.
More money. Exactly. From a monetary standpoint, that's what it boils down to, right? Because if you're an AD and you're looking at wins and losses, and you're kind of in that average to slightly above average range consistently, your donors and your fan base are going to start to get restless, or they're going to start to view your program as stale. One of your greatest marketing arms is your hoops teams, male, female, and then your football squads, right? Football, because generally speaking, there's no other event, especially in some of these smaller markets, that are going to draw 20, 30,000 people every Saturday.
Right.
And then more eyes than that when they're looking at the telecasts. So if you can get a decent TV deal, that's what they're looking at. You get millions in profit sharing that can be dispersed among the members. Again, this is football only, so there's not a huge burden that would be shared among travel costs for non-revenue generating sports. So those would be like swimming, golf, softball, baseball, sports like that. And then, track and field. And then you look at other aspects of it, where if you're not making the FCS playoffs, and for those of you who don't know, generally speaking, the FCS playoff runs lose money for universities, because you put in for your bids. We all saw some of that on Twitter, the controversy of the bids, where North Dakota put up a ton of money and lost out to Weber State, who put up.
I still think that's hilarious, by the way.
It is quite hilarious. It is quite hilarious. All within the letter of the law, but still just kind of a curveball there for the effing Hawks fan base. So I can empathize with them. We've been there before, but the best way to combat that is to try to be a higher seed, and so you don't have to worry about it. The interesting part, though, Thomas, with all this stuff is like, all right, what's going to happen with FCS ball as a whole in terms of the subdivision? Because the reality is it's kind of taken a step back, in the competition level of play has been watered down, specifically in the past year in some change because of the departures of JMU. Oh, JMU, they're not going to be able to compete. FCS isn't real ball. Take a look. Just go ahead and take a look. James Madison had no problems there. And really, the FBS doesn't quite care so much about your ability to compete at that level as it is create eyeballs and revenue, right? And what's your market look like from a media perspective? That's why the Big Ten added Rutgers. They're in the Northeast. That's why the Big Ten added the Penn State brand way back in the day. Northeast, great media market, huge football tradition, good value add. Same thing with Nebraska, huge football tradition, regional footprint. Now they're adding USC and UCLA. So the regional footprint doesn't make any sense. You're starting to see this FBS, Richter scale type effect where everything is shifting. The soil is shifting. Nobody really knows who's going where. So now it's kind of I guess I'd say free for all, so to speak, where people are like, well, shoot, if the FCS is watered down, playoffs aren't a revenue generator, what are we going to do? And so I think it's kind of interesting, Stacks. We were talking about like a snow belt conference.
Yeah. I like the idea. And like, you're taking most of the heavy hitters in FCS and, like the winner of that conference would and essentially be like the national champion. So like,
And see, that's what I'm saying. So like if you boil it down, who are the cream of the crop that are constantly in it? It was North Dakota State, Sam Houston, James Madison, South Dakota State, Montana State. Those you can kind of plug and play one of those others, right?
yeah,
So I mean, if that's been the reality over the past 5-6 years, I mean, are you really missing out if you don't include the Pioneer League, the SoCon, what was it, the Big South Conference for
yeah,
a while? I mean, literally, I can't even name them. It's just because they only have maybe one school that can compete. Like, look at Kansas State, Kennesaw State. They're FBS now too.
yeah.
So I
And
mean,
like, I'm not gonna talk about any run a triple option. Like, okay, is this high school? Like, but good on them. If they could draw that revenue, like, good on them. So
yeah. I mean, I played at Montana, never at Montana State. You played at Montana State twice. And then we both played at all Dakota. Well, I haven't played at North Dakota, but I played against them. Never played against South Dakota. They're the ones that really couldn't hang probably at this current state in time.
I'm gonna tell you like this. Hell no. Like,
Yeah.
they would be getting like,
Yeah, everybody, but every conference needs, inevitably
everyone
someone's
needs
going
a
to finish
punching
last.
bag.
It just happens to be that the Yotes would consistently finish last in that
Yeah.
makeup. But man, can you imagine that though?
I mean,
Montana State, North Dakota State, South
there
Dakota State, and South Dakota. Throw in St. Thomas. I was tweeting out, throw in St. Thomas. They got plenty of money. They got a good
yeah,
regional area. It wouldn't be tough travel for any of these schools. I mean, just getting to Montana and getting to the Dakotas, but that's nothing. Like if
yeah,
it's football only, are you kidding me? I would
yeah,
I would go to any of those games. And see, that's the thing. When South Dakota State has some of these other non-conferences coming to Brookings, they should want to come to South Dakota State, but they know they're going to get trounced.
yeah.
And then also, like, they're not that great of a program traditionally. So the rubber's going to meet the road here soon.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where the level of play. I think of course the Missouri Valley Conference is the best conference in FCS.
Yeah.
I think we could say that like pretty handily. Like, then it'd be you can't have no off weeks if you have like North Dakota State, Montana State, like that would be like a freaking insane schedule.
That's what I love. And that's what needs to happen, because if you're going to move to this FBS type style, or if, because the FCS is incentivizing, you better schedule cupcakes, right? Because UC Davis was punished for having quality non-conference schedule. They had us, they had Cal, they had Sac State. They had to play anyway. They had to play Montana State. Their intra-conference schedule was tough. They played one other tough school that was highly ranked. But at any rate, you see the proof in the pudding, because they rewarded some of these other schools that didn't really play a tough out of conference schedule, right? Your Montanas.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Like, and I mean, I didn't come on here to trash committee, right?
No.
But like, I feel like some of these games, like in some of these teams, like you gotta like legit like see who they play, because I'd say in FCS, like it's so top heavy. So like you're gonna, let's say how like UND, or what was it, SIU was like one of the first ones out.
Yeah.
Right. Like you gotta look at that schedule versus like someone who's just played like absolutely no one all year. Cause I'm like, you're punishing, like SIU's probably beating like, some of these squads that are 6-5 out of another conference. You know what I mean?
Youngstown, for instance, could have made it. I mean, they stubbed their toe here and there, but that turnaround with what that coach did, and I mean, even them, they're getting some run at potential, MAC, jumping up to the MAC, because they're more local to them than they are the Missouri Valley. That's one of the farther trips for us, and I think the interesting thing is the committee always has kind of an untenable position that they're in. I don't think they did a bad job at all this year, really. I mean, I think the biggest question mark kind of was what happened to Montana State, really. Like, why did NDSU get a higher seed? I like that we weren't on the same side of the bracket. I'm sure that has a lot to do with Larson being the AD and the fact that Jacks have traveled plenty to Fargo because of regionality and us not being a seed. So now it's time for some of the other Big Sky schools to have to endure that as well. And they did. And so we'll see what, Montana State emerged from that. Weber was a great team that they had to face, and then they took care of business, as most of the home teams tend to do in that. But you look at the FCS as a whole, it's like, because they need participation and buy-in, and they need the collective subdivision to be intact, they got to let some of these, for lack of a better word, just blatantly weaker conferences to play into the party. And
see how it is.
Yeah, right, wrong, and different. That just waters down the product that you see. And I think that, coupled with the dollars and coupled with the shifting landscape, is cause for jumping. And I'm telling you right now, Washington Grizzly Stadium against NDSU for the FCS kickoff in week 0 a few years ago, that was rocking. That was an exciting watch for just a fan of the football brand. South Dakota State at Montana in the playoffs in 15 was sick to watch. Taryn Christian, Dallas Goddard, Jake Winicky. You look at, we played Montana State in 18. You had Vinatieri, Chase Vinatieri on the fake field goal, tucking in, scoring. And you had Goddard in that game. And, you have in 21 in the playoffs, you had some Pierre Strong Jr., who's now with the Patriots, leaving dudes jock straps on the field. Troy Anderson, draft pick. I mean,
Tucker was going crazy that game too.
Tucker went off in that game. Caleb Sanders, yourself, it's just the storylines are there. And then you got NDSU and JMU. Well, JMU's gone. NDSU, SDSU. That's legitimately the marker game, is a sick rivalry. And let's say NDSU decided to go independent and jump FBS, because we all know what their history has been like in FCS. You don't have that marker game anymore. That trophy game gets shelved, and that's that's become iconic. That's become a college game day level draw. So you look at that, and then you look at North Dakota. That's Mark's only FCS loss. So I mean, just the storylines are rich, and then you look at the joke of a last second play, against the outhouse down south. So, I mean, the storylines are there, man. And then you throw in St. Thomas to the mix, a team that got kicked out of their conference because they were slapping teams around so bad that not only did they not even go D2, they jumped to FCS. Come on, man. That's a snow belt conference if I've ever seen one right there.
That would be fun to watch, especially when it gets later in the year.
Yes, sir. I mean, I know I'm in sales, but I feel like I highlighted some objective factors there. That would be, you're talking about Trey Lance. You're talking about dudes who were drafted literally in the top 5 picks. And come on, man. You're telling me that all these storylines and all these traditions and all, like, the scenic background of the Montanas and, St. Thomas there and St. Paul and Minneapolis. Come on, man. Let's get this going.
So, man, they almost not like cash, man.
I know, right? Like, in Leon Costello, he's the AD for Montana State. He was formerly at South Dakota State, so he's intimately knowledgeable about both programs. Montana came out, one of the Montana schools today, saying that they're not bound to the Big Sky for a lifetime. So, I think you're starting to see some toes dabbling in the water here of what is to come for the future of football. And I'm just excited to see what happens, because not so much the chaos, but for the potential,
For sure.
Yes, sir.
And I think it'd be, good exposure for, some of these teams that nationally sometimes don't get as much love as they should. And like a lot of these players, like, local players from areas like Montana and stuff like that. And, local players from out here, guys who are in the NFL now, but, great players from areas that aren't as populated, right? Like, get that shine too. I think that would be dope.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. And that's something that definitely needs to be considered. I didn't even consider that, but that's probably the biggest value add from a regional standpoint. Like, you really get those Troy Anderson stories and, the Dallas Goddard stories from Britain, Hecla. Like, what? Man, the excitement. Like I got goosebumps thinking about what could be. But it has to happen. People have to have the courage to kind of dabble out and be a pioneer and create new ground. And I mean, the people literally of Montana and South Dakota and North Dakota did that. They literally live in a place that you probably shouldn't live, if we're being honest. It's freaking frigid tundra, but if they pioneered that, I think they can pioneer a jump to the FBS and get creative with it. We'll see. But we should highlight some other things, I think, because I want to create some chaos, but also I like it from a standpoint of like how damn good of a football coach this guy is. Troy Taylor, head coach of Sac State, also because their fan base liked to they were taking shots at us all year, and then they enjoyed that number 2 seed, which I think was fitting. But he's likely going to take the Stanford head coaching job. I mean, that dude has won 3 Big Sky titles. They have an insane overall record. They finally got their first playoff win last week. So that's constantly stepping in the right direction. But it'll be interesting to see. I believe they play Incarnate Word tonight at 9:30 on ESPN Plus. So
upset alert.
I think upset alert.
Upset alert.
That Lindsey Scott is a baller.
Granted, that pass, like, it's cool that it worked out like that, but that, like, come on now, bro, like that.
I mean, that was gutsy, right? To say the least. Gutsy. And sometimes, it's better to be lucky than good. Talking to Coach Rogers over the years, like the way you win titles is sometimes better to be lucky than good. A lot of things have to line up for you. The stars have to align. And on that play, it certainly did. So for those of you who don't know, Lindsey Scott Jr., I want to say, is the quarterback for Incarnate Word. In their game last week was getting rushed and falling back, on his back. Throws the ball up. Honestly, it might be one of the better passes I've seen in terms of getting enough strength on it to score. And then his guy found it and for 6. So he's a playmaker. He's put up stats. He's put up all types of things. And we got also highlight GJ Kinney. He's going to be the head coach at Texas State. So they're going to make a run. And so Coach Hill, the head coach of Weber State, for those who don't know, he just took a defensive coordinator position at BYU. There's huge shakeups, huge voids in the FCS emerging. Like we saw it last year with some guys shuffling around, but now we're starting to see that on top of teams leaving. There's a huge, huge ripple effect that we're seeing this year in terms of change. So Troy, hopefully he takes that job because it would be nice just to see some other teams have to deal with some chaos that we've had to endure with Coach Eck leaving last year and, Coach Schleisner as well. And, and Coach Berge leaving as well. He's done great things at Winona State. So it's the nature of the game, the coaching carousel. But it'd be nice to see some other teams have to overcome that adversity.
For sure.
Cool. Well, man, we've covered some good ground here. I'm excited. I hope everybody enjoys the game tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Shout out again to our sponsors, Cottonwood Coffee in Drake's Place of Bodle, South Dakota. If you guys can, make sure you show up and fill the Dana. Get loud.
I will see you there.
Let's go. Make your presence known. And before the game, if you need to tailgate, go hang with the book club and the hair raisers. Enjoy some good community, some good drinks, some good eats. And with that, go big, go blue,
go Jacks.